So with the 6th anniversary coming up, new players will get 3 hero selectors and 6 fully decked hero selectors, where new players counts as any account created within 90 days before the start of the anniversary. And current/returning players will get 3 hero selectors and 4 fully decked hero selectors. So overall, that's 7 selectors for current/returning players and 9 hero selectors for new players. So there is one more thing that we have to keep in mind, which is what does fully decked mean? So the theory is that fully decked at least is going to give us a level 60 unit with max awakens, and there are some people who are praying that it also gives you plus 15. If it does give you plus 15, that would greatly change your decision making. We can go down from the top. Let's say current players get 7 selectors, and we can pick the top 7 units, excluding Bellona. Let's just say Genua, Noctwall, Celine, Rowana, Ravi, Arya, and Elena. So these 7 units, Arya, Ravi, and Celine, are plus 15 units. So by using the fully decked selector, if it does give you a plus 15 unit, you would instantly max them out, and that would save you a lot of molas. And then next we're looking at Rowana, Elena, Noctwall, and Genua. Noctwall, you get the F chances on plus or S1 and S3. Rowana, you max her S2 and then max her S3, but her S1 has 7 skill enhances that you don't go into. And then Elena, same thing as Rowana. So next up for the most mola costly would be Genua. Because we have so many selectors, you would figure out which 7 units you're picking all at once, and then see which ones are the most cost effective for Molagoras. And then the ones that are cheaper, you would use your normal selectors on. But that's only if it gives you a plus 15. We don't know yet. Just something to keep in mind if it does give you plus 15. I don't think it will, but it would be nice if they did. So now let's talk about the actual tier list. First up, there's Euceria and Paladus, who are both available for free in a selective summon, but since it's a selective summon, there's a chance somebody baited you and you picked the wrong unit. If you didn't get these units already, then get them, because they are easily S-tier units. Next up, there is Tamron and Brieg, also S-tier units, but they are becoming free with the new patch, so do not select them because they are free. And then there's also Wukong, who is also an S-tier unit, but typically these selectors have a cutoff of 6 months. Anything that's newer than 6 months isn't available. So I don't think he will be available, but if he is, then get him, because he's kind of OP. And then this Bridget girl, don't know what her name is, she sucks, don't pick her, D tier. And then let's look at the actual units. There's Genua, easily the best DPS in the game. He's been terrorizing everybody ever since his release. He's also annoyingly hard to kill with his 50% CR push on S2. That makes him do more damage because he gets rage. And then also his immortality. He's a pain in the kill while doing way too much damage. They've started releasing pen resist units like ML Ilanav. But she only gives like 30% to your whole team, which is a lot. But his S1 still does a lot of damage, and it doesn't def pen, so he's still going to be chunking units with his S1 at least, and S3 is still going to do a good amount of damage, just not the ridiculous amount that it currently does. Either way, best DPS in the game, get him. And then there's Noctwall, really annoying debuffer. Her S3 is an AoE strip into Bind, which prevents units from acting out of turn, so no counterattacks, no extra attacks, nothing. And it also increases all skill cooldowns by 1. You can Soul Burn to ignore F-Res. It also gives her an extra turn, and then she can S2, and her S2 seals one enemy, and then gives her extra speed. And it's also on a 2-turn cooldown, so with the extra speed, she will just loop back around S1, and then S2 again and seal somebody. Kind of a crazy unit, very annoying, definitely grab her. And then there's Celine. She's an anti-non-attack skill DPS. S2 will slam into an enemy, either a random one that can stun with her EE, or you can pick the EE that makes her target the highest attack. Really good unit into units with non-attack skills, but people are a little bit too in love with her. She is like the most commonly picked unit or something in champ every time. So there's a website that tracks RTA stats, and it no longer separates by champion and emperor, but she used to see like a 10% win rate decrease going from emperor to the champion, because people just love picking her in really bad spots. Just because they have it on attack skill does not mean she's OP, because sometimes they can win even without pressing their own attack skill. She did get a buff recently that helps greatly with this. She gets stealth at the start of the battle, and also when using S1, so she's much harder to kill. But just don't just pick her every time you see an on-attack skill. Very good unit, though. And then there's Rowana. Rowana, for PvE, can be used in Ice Expedition, and every once in a while she'll pop up for some higher-end PvE content here and there. Some of the more time-limited ones, like the Ludicar Summer event with Leith. She was good there, and also some of the advents. Sometimes she's okay. Her PV usage isn't that much, but for PvP she's really nice because she is the best anti-counter, anti-duel, anti-extra attack unit. And she's been relevant since her release. There's always one really annoying unit out there that either spams counter attacks, extra attacks, or whatever. So great unit, you should definitely pick her up. She's been like top tier for 3-4 years at this point. And then there is Ravi. So Ravi is really strong right now, but I'm not sure exactly how long she'll stay strong, but she's like the only good fire bruiser in the game. And she's not that hard to use. She auto crits, which is nice for some of these anti-crit units, like ML Andy, and I guess ML Fawn's getting that soon, but her damage isn't too high. You kind of have to soul burn her S1 for the big burst, and her S3 is pretty solid too. Just good all-around, like, standard-ish unit. She could easily be A tier. Well, there's not too much difference. She's at the end of S. And then there's Bologna, where if you have Wukong, I wouldn't roll for or select their Bologna, because you can one-shot Rift with either Bologna or Wukong. You don't need both. But if you have no Wukong and you want to one-shot Rift, then you should get Bologna. There's also, we don't know how long Rift is staying here. I think it's been like 3 months at this point, so there's probably 3 months left. The Bologna does have some uses outside of Rift. You can use her in Banshee one-shot, which isn't really that high prio because Rift exists. You're generally not going to farm Banshee. If you were going to pick a hunt to farm for Golden Charms, it would be Wyvern. And you could also use her for Nightmare Jewel Leave, but there's like 50 DPS that you can use for Nightmare Jewel Leave, so she's not really that high prio there either. She has some other uses, just not super high prio, but if you want to one-shot Rift and you don't have Wukong, grab Bologna. And then there is Arya. Arya is a very good unit for Arena and sometimes Guild War, because any team that has really low damage in Arena, like a lot of these meta defenses right now have Elena, ML Bellion, or I mean Bellion is ML Bellion, ML Ilanav, ML Senya, even ML Landy, or you can tank through pretty easily. These are all just super low damage teams that have no threat. So Arya with a bunch of supports, I usually use ML Armin, or Light Armin, and ML Chloe with ML Landy. The supports around Arya, she will just solo the entire enemy team by herself on auto. I usually quick battle with her. And then for Guild War, it kind of depends what the current meta defenses are. Sometimes she's good into them. There's also Christie is a good support for her. You can stack up Efrez, and she's good into some of the meta defenses sometimes. Not always, but she does pop up here and there. And then for RTA, she's the last pick. You only ever pick her after you've seen the almost the entire enemy team pretty much on your 4-5 or 5 slot. If the enemy doesn't have the means to remove her counter buff or strip the stealth off of her ally so that they're not forced to hit her, then she's a really good last pick. She does require kind of hard gear though. You need lifesteal set with immunity buff, for Arena at least. Needs immunity buff, but guaranteed lifesteal set. And then she's a death scaler, so a bunch of defense. You want a lot of HP because there's a lot of units with like white damage that just is going to shred through defense units. Also, Genua can just hit her. So you need to make sure that you're not dying even with your high defense. So you need high HP. Then you also need effect resistance, like 100-ish. And then you also need like crit damage. So it's just a really weird stat line. Very hard to gear, especially for RTA. She needs very, very good gear. Her needing good gear for Arena and Guild War is a myth because I use an absolutely horrible Arya for Arena and Guild War, and she has never failed me there. And then there's Alana. She's kind of the cleave counter. Some of the higher end cleaves should be able to deal with her pretty easily, but she'll work against some cleaves and also decent against Noctwall, because unless she can soul burn, you can push up and then just cleanse. And also even her S1 still cleanses debuff. And then there is Ran. I need to stop doing that. Ran is the best PvP unit, or the best cleave opener. Like, he's been a cleave opener since his release. Just really annoying unit. AoE Death Break with really good damage for some reason. And you can also soul burn to ignore Efrez, but since he's a cleave unit, you need to run him really, really fast, and also have the other gears to support your cleave units. So he might be hard to pick up, especially for new players. Like I think like 99% of the player base can't actually use Rand properly because of gear limitations. Para is pretty much the same thing, especially with band protection. Para has gotten pretty strong for cleave. So she is also another cleave unit, though she does have some uses outside of cleave. Mainly if they pick some like fast unit, you could pick Para because her base speed is really, really high and try to outspeed them. And then there's Fumir. Fumir is a really fun unit, but also really, really hard to use because Fumir needs one fire unit and then one earth unit to take a turn, and then she will go and do a bunch of horrifying things. And because you need one earth and one fire unit exactly, she kind of warps your entire draft. You have to draft around her. Band protection makes it a little bit easier because you can put something like Knockwool in your band protection slot and then draft like Laya, Selene, Gala as your two other picks. So they can't actually ban out your fire earth units and she'll always go off. They have to either ban Fumir and then your last pick you just pick something that's gonna like guarantee them a loss, so they either have to ban that or they'll lose. So really fun unit and also really good. Her win rate's always like pretty high. She's just really hard to use, so she's a little bit lower. And then there's Araminta. Araminta is really good with anybody who doesn't pick cleansers. She drops down like a billion debuffs. It also gives attack buff to your whole team while spamming burns. It's a pretty good unit. I don't think she's that stable because if we get right now there's like no good cleansers. If we get into like a meta where people start picking cleansers super often, she's probably gonna die down. But as it stands right now, there's a lot of drafts where people don't pick a cleanser, and Aura is pretty good into them. They'll also keep in mind that because she's debuff reliant, sometimes she doesn't work. And then this is the tier where it's like, I wouldn't really say you need these units. It's kind of a need by need basis. Also, if you like them, you can pick them up. Destina and Ray are just two Earth Cleansers. You only really need one of these, in my opinion. I'd say Ray's probably the better PvE cleanser, but he's also, like, the things that you need them for aren't that useful. So Destina kind of has PvP usage. She's been kind of dead for a while now, but she is usable sometimes if, like, you need her S3 to, like, reset a fight. So one of these two is a potential option if you want to. And then there's Shu. Shu is mostly for Nightmare Raid. She's the best DPS for Karkanis, but I don't know if that's something I'd spend a selector on. And then for PvP, sometimes you can pick her into full Earth teams, but not that great. And there's Elvira. Elvira's pretty nice for Guild War and Arena because she blocks Fighting Spirit. So she's good into some of these low threat Euphine Candy teams. You do need to pair her with other stuff, like probably, especially if you're fighting Candy, you probably need to pair her with Ramana, otherwise Candy just kills you alone off of S1 and or salvos. But she's good for Guild War Arena, sometimes usable in RTA, but oftentimes the draft, she's not really gonna like, they kind of just ignore her. And there's Lua. Lua's also really good, and just like really good like fast opener tier, but the problem is she needs Laya, because if you don't pick Laya, they will pick Laya, and then you will lose. So she's really good, but also because there's like other openers that are good, you're gonna have to put like not your best speed set gear on her, which might make her harder to use, and you need Laya, so she's a little bit lower. Flan is mostly for arena cleaving. With the new units out, Flan is getting a ton of use for arena cleaving. With her AoE Death Break, then that you can soul burn for an extra turn into her S2, push somebody up, giving them attack and crit debuff. Pretty good. She also does sometimes appear in Advent, which isn't really something that you should prioritize. You do that like once every 6 months, but it is something to keep in mind. And then there's Green Leica. Leica is just an aggro unit. Her S2 will dual attack with the high stack ally, also landing target. And I think it also strips a buff now with her EE. And then, so she'll dual attack with somebody. So you want like a high DPS carry with you, something like ML Landy or Bloodblade Karin are both super good options. And then her S3 offers pretty solid utility too. AoE sleep into immunity buff is not bad. And there's Hua Young. She's kind of hard to gear because you need so much attack on her. All she really wants is attack and then some speed. You want like around 5k attack at least. She also has the issue where with her rework, she doesn't kill high HP units anymore. She kills like mid HP units instead. And a lot of the meta units have way too much HP. So She's useful if you have like a unit that you want to kill and you know you can kill. Also, she only kills units with a low attack. But she's kind of useful if you have something that you know she can kill, but a little bit hard to pick. And there's Abigail, who's getting buffed. The buff helps a little bit with her consistency. Her S2 with the if the unit in the back slot is about to die, she will instead give them immortality and a buff that lets them heal off of damage, and her buff lets her cleanse that unit first, so you won't be able to put unbuffable on the back unit and she'll be able to cleanse them. And the cleanse is also nice in general for just removing other debuffs like seal or whatever. So that buff helps a bit with her consistency. The buffs don't go into effect until 9/12, and not super good unit. Even after buffs, she'll probably only be B tier, but kind of a fun unit to use. I like using her. And there's Ida. She's a cleave unit. You pick her with units with non-attack skills, so like Ran, Peyra, I guess Lua. Mostly Ran and Peyra since they attack buff too. Ida, you can soul burn to get an extra turn and do 2 AoEs that do damage, pushback, stun. The only problem is that both of those AoEs are counterable, so you have to make sure that you're not going to get spam countered or anything. And there's Lilias. Lilias, PvP, not too much usage. You only really use her into Lua on more artifact. And her S3 has a cleanse, and she does get 50% crit chance on her S1 and S3, so she's kind of a bruiser sometimes. Not too much PvE usage, like a little bit maybe in Nightmare Vera if you need her and you don't have that many options. She's not a really high prio unit, but she is decently fun. And there's Euphine. Eufine's usage is only for Euphi Lab, just clearing all of Nixie's Sanctum 5 for ancient coins, spending like a couple hours every like couple weeks, I guess, to do it. So it's only really if you want to, not a huge prio. She doesn't really have any usage outside of that. Like for Banshee, why would you use Euphine when both Bologna and Midnight Gall Lilias both do more damage than her? And also when Banshee's such a low prio hunt. Not really any point to her. And there's Ball and Sezin. Ball and Sezin is why Tenebria is down here in the dumpster, because Ball and Sezin is just better Tenebria. Ball, he is AoE Death Break and Speed Down for Earth Expedition and Nightmare Vera. Since that's not too high prio in my opinion, because unless you want to one-shot your Earth Expedition, you don't need Ball, and Nightmare Vera has plenty of other options for clearing it. But if you do want to pump your Earth Exped damage numbers up, then Ball and Sezin's the way to go. And then there's Ken. His usage is only really Wyvern 13 one-shot. People were kind of using him for memes in PvP last season, but it's mostly just for Wyvern 13 one-shot, and you can also kind of use him in Light Exped. He's not bad there. His S2, Death Break, and then with ZE to dual attack. He does have some replacement options, like Camilla just replaces him in Wyvern. He does have a higher win rate, so he would save you a bit of time and get you a bit more consistency. But since Camilla's a pretty easy to get, much cheaper replacement, I just use her instead of using a selector on her. And then there's Alencia, who is getting buffed. I don't have that much faith in her buffs. She's currently D tier. I say predicting B, but I think she might still be D after her buffs, not gonna lie. But I also don't really know what I'm talking about, so we'll see where she ends up. She is a injury unit. She just pumps a ton of injury. She'll like S3 strip into giving your whole team a def buff, and also 50% CR, so she can S3 and then push up, and then her S1 def break, which on Soulburn now ignores effect resistance, so she'll def break into S2, do like a good amount of damage while applying injury. There's a chance that she could be good into certain matchups, especially with all these HP scalers around. And then there's Vildred. Vildred is only if you are a cleaver and you want speed imprints, because you could slate him, but slates can be used on ML units and limited units. So it's better to just, if you have like every unit already and you have nothing else to do, grabbing some Vildreds isn't a bad idea, but do keep in mind, only do this if you are cleaving. He's useless otherwise. And then this is the tier where you probably don't need any of these units, and you might want to start looking at imprint instead. Some of these are like kind of usable, like Basar, with his like Soulburn Ignore Ephras, if you're playing some Ephras, Cheesers, and RTA. Kind of a force ban. If they don't ban him, you just AoE push back unbuffable their 300 Ephras team without any F. Zahawk is kind of usable into evasion, but evasion's really bad. And also, like, the premier evasion unit, Adin, who isn't even picked that much right now, sometimes just outspeeds him and kills him. Kayron's like niche anti-cleaver or whatever. Doesn't really work that often either. These are like kind of glebe units. But it's like, if you have, unless you're going for collection, then you might just want to look at an imprint instead. And that's it for the hero section. There is a separate video for the artifacts. And hope this helped anybody who was looking for it. Oh, I'm going to have the link to this image in the description. And if you have any other questions, you can join the Discord in the Guidance Grounds channel.